Hi, welcome to the High Lady Book Club.
My name is Jessie, and I love podcast discussions and deep dives.
And I'm Katie, and I love all things Sarah J Maas and outlandish theories.
So we combine those loves into a weekly Sarah J Maas discussion podcast. We'll be reading along to her books.
We're diving into Crescent City first, and class is starting now.
This is the English class you don't want to spark note. Hi, welcome back to the High Lady Book Club.
Welcome back, everyone, and nice to see you, Jessie. I miss being 5 minutes apart like we were in the summer. How has your week been going since I don't get to see you every day to find out day by day?
It's been good. I had some fun on Sunday. I got a little tipsy after having one beer at lunch, and I went to Barnes and Noble and found a Norse mythology book and had a lot of fun just flipping through the pages. And I definitely found a lot of interesting tidbits that I think will help contribute to some of our outlandish theories and maybe help us with some foreshadowing potentially.
Ooh, that's so exciting. I can't wait to hear about all your new tidbits. So why don't we just jump right in? Jessie's going to recap chapters 24 to 29 of Crescent City. So if you haven't read up to this point, come back when you have, and otherwise, let's jump back into Midgard.
All right, let's do it. So chapter 24 opens up with Bryce being really upset because she just found out that Micah was the angel in the alley that she saved the night that Danica died. And nobody bothered to
Yeah.
let her know that he was safe, that he didn't die. She had no idea who that person was. And we learned that she had been calling hospitals and trying to figure out what happened to the angel. And Hunt says that they kept it a secret because it would have made Micah seem weak if it was revealed that he had been saved by a 20-year-old half breed who hadn't even made the drop. Ouch.
Yeah.
So Hunt feels horrible, realizing how much Bryce cared, and also he lets it slip that he thought she was a suspect, and that just kind of drives her over the edge. Understandably, I think at this point.
Yeah.
So she just starts running. Kind of like gave me Forrest Gump vibes. She just starts running and she just keeps running. Um, she eventually stops and pulls up a picture of Danica and she recalls a memory of them in serious trouble. It seems like they were in a car accident when they were on a stolen motorcycle and they're being held up by someone with a gun. And it seems like they both think that they might die. And Danica tells Bryce for the first time that she loves her. And Bryce tells Danica to close her eyes.
hmm
And then we don't get the rest of that story. I want to know what's happening with that. But it just jumps ahead. Chapter 25 opens from Hunt's point of view. And he gets intel that the Viper Queen's alibi is checked out and that the newest victim was one of the acolytes from Luna's temple, like they suspected. Hun
Yeah.
also is regretting bringing Bryce to the scene and wants to apologize to her. He sees her go into the White Raven and follows her in to apologize. He then proceeds to make things worse when he assumes that she's drinking vodka when it's only water. And she's clearly just done with him at this point, wants him to leave. Juniper shows up. She's the one who invited Bryce there.
Yeah, it seems like Hunt's really starting to realize, that maybe Bryce isn't just this party princess that he assumed she was and that he kind of misjudged her. And I feel like with several turn of events, but now he's like really just feeling like terrible about it, which is nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really coming around to her. So Bryce and Juniper walk away to go to the bathroom. Rune shows up, sees them across the dance floor, and then the club explodes.
Yeah. That was pretty unexpected to me because we've just been to the White Raven so many times throughout the story. So I was not expecting it to get blown up. And yeah, that was tragic. And also just another chapter ending on a cliffhanger, the way Sarah J Maas always does it, always making you just keep reading until like 2 a.m. to finish, I don't know, the entire book because she just keeps leaving
Yeah,
these cliffhangers.
she's really good at that. And I'm just glad that I didn't have to stop reading the portion here because I would have been freaking out.
Yeah,
We open up with chapter 26 and we learn that Bryce jumped like on top of Juniper, basically trying to like shield her from the impact of the explosion. Um, and
yeah,
Juniper is super pissed at Bryce because she did this because Juniper's already made the drop. So she has like a way higher chance of being okay and walking away after an explosion, whereas Bryce doesn't. And and Juniper slaps Bryce in the face, which I get. Tensions were high, but I was like, really, this isn't the time. I don't know. Hun then carries Bryce to Rune's place where he fixes her up. Bryce shares that she shielded Juniper for the sake of Juniper's career, basically, because she might be the first Fawn to be a main role in one of the ballets, which is nice and all.
yeah,
But
that was.
and Rune comes back to the house, says he believes it was probably one of the human rebels who planted the bomb in the club, and because they found that they left an insignia which appeared to be a warp C, which they were thinking that could stand for Crescent City, or maybe could that be a symbol of Luna's horn? And are they targeting
Yeah,
Rune, Hunt, and Bryce for looking into all of this and basically giving them warning signs to
right.
stop? But because it's seeming like it might be the human rebels, they're thinking they may have to visit Philip Briggs, maybe seeing if it's someone that's continuing the rebellion even though he's in prison. Rune also reveals
Yeah.
that the Autumn King found out about Rune involving Bryce with the search for the horn.
Mm-hmm.
So the Autumn King is like, Bryce needs to have a bodyguard to keep her out of trouble. And Rune is like, I can do that. I can be your bodyguard. And Bryce is like,
Yeah,
no, no, you know what? I already have this guy who has to be here all the time. He can just like stay with me. That's fine.
I know, I love that.
I That made sense to me. I mean, you're gonna have two alpha holes following you everywhere. No, at
Yeah,
least
that sounds
maintain it to
terrible.
one. Yeah. And then Rune also mentions he wants to check out the library at the gallery. And hesitates but ends up making a deal that he can see the books at the gallery if he agrees to get his friend Declan to hack information from the Pack of Devils to find out Danica's last whereabouts before her death. Then we're on to chapter 27. Hunt and Bryce go back to her apartment, and Hunt asks why she hasn't made the drop yet. Bryce says she was waiting to do it with Danica and that Connor and Thorn were going to be their anchors. Her walls are coming down a little bit, and she ends up giving him like some real insight into how much she's been suffering since Danica and the Pack's death. She said, when they all died, a light went out in me.
Yeah, I feel like through this set of chapters, we really just get to see how depressed Bryce is and has been for the past 2 years. And then also, what a difficult time right now is and how she's sort of having to relive all of this through, this murder investigation. And so that these chapters were definitely had an element of just, sadness. And I just really felt for Bryce.
She is having a really rough time. Hunt promises that he's going to find the killer, and he also reveals the deal that he made with Micah, which he was not
Hmm.
supposed to tell anyone. So he's like, don't tell anyone. She agrees. Hunt also apologizes for thinking she was a suspect, and Bryce says, like, I let people think that I'm the party girl that they think I am because I learn a lot about people when I let them assume the worst about me, which I
Yeah,
thought
good
was,
advice.
yeah. Um, and Hunt ends up staying in the guest room in her apartment where he sees a picture of her parents and realizes that her dad, for all like intents and purposes, is Randall Salago, who we learn is a legendary sharpshooter and a war hero. So I'm sure that's going to come
Hmm.
into play at some point. And we also see a picture of Bryce and Danica in a desert mountain landscape, and Bryce's arm is bandaged up. And it seems like that picture was probably taken after whatever motorcycle wreck that Bryce was recounting. And I really want to know what happened at the end of that story. And we're on to chapter 28. Juniper shows up at Bryce's apartment to apologize with chocolate croissants and walks in on Hunt shirtless in Bryce's apartment. And Hunt does the classic, like, oh, it's not what it looks like. And I loved that Juniper was like,
Yeah.
all right, then, like, can you leave and, like, give us some privacy? Like, she's just like, everyone just disses Hunt so hard. And I feel like he just, like, takes it. I don't know. Always makes me
I
laugh.
know, I kind of love it.
Yeah. Juniper does say that the White Raven, is totally wrecked, and she does apologize for hitting Bryce, and then she kind of leaves off to her dance class. And Hun is then insistent about getting his own set of keys for Bryce's apartment and learning all the enchantments, which Bryce leads to Bryce calling him an alpha hole and breaking down to him what that means, which I really enjoyed that part. I loved that she said, so she tells him, she's going off of like, you're an alpha hole. That means that you're like this, and this. She goes, your favorite hobbies are brooding, fighting, and roaring. You've perfected about 30 types of snarls and growls. You've got a cabal of hot friends. And the moment one of you mates, the others fall like dominoes too. And God's help you when you all start having babies. I thought that was hilarious because it also, I feel like it described a lot of Sarah J Maas' main love interest. So I kind of love that she was making fun of her own trope there.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, yeah, that was great. And now we're on to chapter 29, and Hunt asks Bryce what the deal is between her and Rune. She says they used to be close, but they had this fight about the Autumn King, and it escalated to him accusing her of flirting with his friends. Hunt asks if she's ever has contact with her father, and she says only when she has to, and that she hates him more than anyone else in Midgard except Sabine.
Yeah, she's still hiding the fact that the Autumn King is her dad. So Hunt doesn't know that, and she's like keeping that from him still.
Yeah, she's completely keeping who he is in the dark. Like, and it doesn't seem at this point like Hunt suspects anything. Um, and so Bryce asks who is number one on Hunt's hit list, and he says Sandriel. And then Rune shows up at the gallery to check out the books in the library. And the one that
Hmm.
calls out to him is called The Great Romances of the Fae. And I love that Bryce was like, you sure that starborn power isn't just for finding smut? I think a lot of us would love to have that power. And we also find out more about Prince Pelias and his bride, Lady Helena. We also learn that there was a Fae Queen, Theia. So the Fae Queen Theia was also starborn. And we learn a bit more about Prince Pelias and Queen Theia, and that starlight can be channeled through sacred objects. So the horn won't work without a starborn heir using it.
Yeah, which I feel like is very relevant because it means Rune is pretty important here. And it's also starting to seem like the Autumn King is a little bit more and more of a suspect. because this is giving him a stronger motive for
Yeah.
having committed these murders. He knows about Rune's heritage, and he would know about how to operate the horn. And so I think it's just interesting. And he also would have access to Rune. So I don't know, it definitely suggests that the Autumn King has a motive for this murder.
Yes, definitely. I agree. We also learned that Danica was stationed at Luna's temple for 2 days before it being stolen, and also during the blackout when the horn was stolen. We also learned that Danica was stationed at Luna's temple for 2 days before it was stolen, and also during the blackout when it was stolen.
Yeah. And we also learned that Sabine often switched Danica's schedule out of spite to kind of get back at Danica whenever Danica pissed her off, which is interesting.
Yeah, it definitely made me suspicious that she switched something around because she had some involvement with her murder. She's honestly my top
Hmm.
suspect right now.
Yeah.
Then they decide to go ask the Oracle about the horn, and they kind of, Bryce and Rune end up pushing Hunt to do it because Bryce and Rune both basically say they've had bad experiences with the Oracle and refuse to go, which really makes me wonder what Bryce's
Right. Yeah.
experience was because we don't know that. We know Rune's already. I also love that Lahaba is like flirting with Rune and like, oh, like what's it like to be the chosen one? And like being like, can I see your star sword? Like being like his number one fangirl. Her character just cracks me up. I love her. She's funny. And then basically the chapter ends with Bryce and Hunt going to head to the comitium to get his clothes since now he's going to be staying at Bryce's apartment since he's her new full-time bodyguard, which I feel like he already was, but now I guess he has reason to stay in the apartment. So I'm excited to read more now that Bryce and Hunt are officially roommates.
Yeah. I wonder where that could lead us.
Yes.
I don't know. So yeah, we read a lot of information. Let's take a quick break before we dive into our discussion.
Okay, let's jump into some discussion.
Let's do it. Okay, so when Rune read that book, The Great Romances of the Fae, we also learned a little bit more about the horn. And we learned that it was permanently broken and it could only be repaired by light that is not light and magic that is not magic. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts on what that could mean? Is it truly broken? What is light that is not light or magic that's not magic? What are your thoughts on all of that?
I feel like it feels like a riddle that I don't have the exact answer to, but I have a
Hmm.
theory that it's gonna have to do. I feel like Bryce is gonna somehow be the one that can use it. Kind of
Interesting.
brings me back to like when Rune had that vision of like Bryce having a halo and it kind of seeming the star starts seeming to sing around her. Like it makes me think that she also might have this connection that might be able to repair Luna's horn if they find it.
Hmm.
So I feel strongly that she's gonna have some role in it. But yeah, I haven't quite solved the riddle yet.
That's fair. It's a confusing riddle. I obviously won't weigh in on your
Yeah.
theory, but I like it. Um, but Hunt also sees Bryce's tattoo down her back now that he's living with Bryce. And it's in an alphabet that Hunt didn't recognize. So I'm wondering, we've seen some references to the old language of the Fae and like these ancient languages. What do you think these symbols could be?
Yeah, I feel like they definitely could be word marks. Like
Yeah.
I feel like there's a
Yeah,
strong possibility.
that's what I was thinking too. So that's just an interesting, um, yeah, little tidbit. So throughout these sets of chapters, we've got a couple different names that I just looked into because I was interested to see if they had any hidden meanings. And Sarah J Maas did not disappoint. So we heard about the Adrestia prison. That's where Philip Briggs is located. It's the Asteres prison. And so Adrestia comes from a Greek word which means inescapable or she who cannot be escaped. I feel like that's interesting because it's a prison, and so it just adds this level of this inescapable prison. It gives like an extra piece to the name, which probably doesn't have any further meaning than that, but it's just interesting how detailed she gets in naming everything.
She is so detailed. I feel like when I first started reading her books, I just kind of thought things are just like words she made up or random. And then actually mostly talking to you and learning that this is a lot of like mythology she's inspired by, I'm like, oh, these are real words that have like actual meaning because I've never heard of them before.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like it really just adds to the reading experience, and it also, I think it helps me, gives me some like foreshadowing. I don't know, it gives you a little extra knowledge. It's fun.
yeah, I completely agree. So another one that she does, she names the group that Philip Briggs is leading Keres. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. Keres. And Keres is a Greek goddess of death in Greek mythology, sometimes considered a group of goddesses, not just specifically one, depending on the myth, which I feel like is relevant here because this is a group of people.
Yeah,
But these goddesses, or one goddess, is especially presiding over violent death in battle, which I feel like is very relevant for Philip Briggs and sort of what he stands for.
it makes a lot of sense for their group.
Yeah, it really does. Another interesting naming that Sarah J. Maas picks out is Asphodel Meadows. So if you remember, that's where the humans live. And we kind of get a reference to it this chapter when Bryce is running all throughout the city. She runs through Asphodel Meadows. And it's actually in Greek mythology. There are three sections of the underworld in Greek mythology. There's Elysia, where souls are granted eternal reward. So, kind of thinking like the biblical heaven. There's Tartarus, where souls are granted eternal punishment, which is, along the lines of the biblical hell. And then there's Asphodel Meadows, where ordinary souls live. So I feel
Hmm.
like that's kind of interesting because it adds this level of ordinary souls. It's in this world in Midgard, humans are very ordinary compared to all of the other creatures. So yeah, I thought that was just an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, it makes me think that Meadows is almost like purgatory, like along those
Huh.
lines. Another interesting thing that I learned about Norse mythology when I was going through that book at Barnes and Noble, it talked about hell, spelled the same way that it is in Crescent City, just Hel.
Ooh.
And it specifically said that hell in Norse mythology, hell is different than how many of us or many modern day religions tend to think of it. In Norse mythology, hell is cold. It's not full of fire. And the souls who are condemned to an eternity there are not punished in the ways we think of. In like the modern idea of hell, it's a cold, dark, and damp place to mimic the conditions of a grave. And there is actually little in the way of suffering recorded. And many of the depictions imply that it mimics life on Earth, allowing the dead to eat, drink, and sleep.
It makes me start to think, could hell then just be sort of like what you were suggesting of purgatory or just, another world? And could we see Danica and the pack of devils there if we could get to there?
Yeah, especially like I remember we talked about in a previous episode. I'm like, oh, I hope Danica and the Pack of Devils aren't in hell. That would be horrible. But in Norse
Right.
mythology, learning about what hell is, it actually makes it seem like it's not just this place where if you're a terrible person, that's where you're going to go to burn for all eternity. Like it might just be a place that the dead go and people aren't
Hmm.
suffering there. So it does make me seem like that option might actually be a thing, or I might hope for it more now, knowing that hell's not a terrible place.
Yeah, we'll have to keep reading to find out. Those are all of the names that we kind of pulled out of these chapters. We'll continue to read with a fine comb to find these little interesting naming conventions that she's using. But I kind of want to switch gears now, and I want to start talking about Pelias and Theia and Helena and all of the information we get on them.
Let's dive into that.
So Theia is a Titan goddess of sight and vision, which is interesting when we're talking about vision and sight. It kind of makes me think of light, and we have the starborn light. Um, she's also mother of the light to the sun, moon, and dawn gods and goddesses. So she seems to be this really important Titan for all things space and light, which is very relevant to all of this information we've learning about these different worlds and how they, might be parallel to each other. She must be somebody important.
Definitely, especially the starborn power feels like there's a lot of like light involved with that, and also just the Fae power and how they used to once be able to blind people with light.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like it's related.
Also, jumping out of mythology for a second, it's been hypothesized that a planet nicknamed Theia collided with Earth, like some billions and billions of years ago, and it resulted in a lot of debris that was ejected and formed the moon. So I think that's kind of interesting because we have Luna, who is this goddess of moon. So could Theia be Luna's mom or something along those lines? And also, when Theia, the planet, collided with Earth, it resulted in providing much of Earth's water. So that's making me think, is Theia the mother of all the gods, including Ogenis, or maybe just Ogenis and Luna? I don't know, it feels connected some way in with their gods.
Oh wow. And and it's hypothesized that outside of mythology that this like actually happened billions of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like
That's
a
really
real
interesting.
hypothesis that scientists have.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so Sarah J Maas pulling from different, mythology and real science. Very, very cool.
That is cool. And I like how you found a way to like collide the mythology and the real theories too.
Yeah, I feel like we have to pull from everything because I don't know what Sarah J Maas is using. So we just have to assume she's pulling from everything. Um, But I also think it's interesting to talk about the starborn power. Um, so Thea and her daughters have that power, and they are not blood related to Pelias because Lady Helena marries Pelias, or maybe they are. But I'm just gonna hope not. I'm gonna hope we're not having some incestual relationships here. So assuming not, it it's an important fact because it means that there's more than one line of starborn Fae.
It would be really interesting if there's another line of starborn Fae in Midgard for a lot of reasons because okay, someone else might have motive that we don't yet know like who they are for finding Luna's horn. And also, I mean,
Right.
that's just interesting in itself. Do they know who the other people are in that bloodline?
Exactly. And I have a bit of an outlandish theory about exactly that. So bear with me here.
Ooh.
But Thea has two daughters. One isn't named, which I feel like probably has some significance, and she's somebody important and big, and there will be some grand reveal as to who she is. But the other one is Helena, and we do get a little bit of information about Helena. She's the one who's married to Pelias. And jumping back to mythology, Helena is a figure who is said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Um, and in the book, in Crescent City, she's described as having night black hair and golden skin. And so I just couldn't help but think about who else could have this night black hair and these gorgeous looks. And the person who comes to mind is Ember Quinlan. So my outlandish theory is that Ember Quinlan is related to Thea. She comes from Thea's bloodline, either through Helena or through the other daughter, or maybe she is the other daughter, but that feels far-fetched since she's only a human. So Ember Quinlan is described as a knockout with freckled skin, full lips, high cheekbones, and depthless, striking eyes. So clearly she's very beautiful, and she has some features along the lines to Helena.
If Ember Quinlan is a descendant, that would mean that Bryce had star power from both sides. So,
It's very possible that mhm, that she has it from both sides. But we also, early on in the book, we heard that um, Bryce's power was near negligible. So that's kind of throws a wrench in this theory, I guess.
yes, I I personally don't believe that that's going to be true. I feel like I think that she is going to be really powerful. And I also, it's reading that flashback that Bryce had about her and Danica in that motorcycle accident. She says something about telling Danica to close her eyes, and then she lets go, like, it was something along the lines of like a key turning a lock or something, some kind of phrase that to me felt like classic Sarah J Maas description of someone going into their power. So I have this theory that the reason she wanted Danica to close her eyes is she did something with her power that might have ended up in someone being killed. And she has this power and people don't know about it and it's a secret. And yeah, that's my theory.
Well, I like your theory. I won't share my thoughts on your theory, but I like it overall. So I'm not quite done discussing Thea and Helena, but it's going to involve some spoilers from Throne of Glass and ACOTAR. So let's take a quick break and meet us back here if you've read Sarah J Maas's other books.
Okay, so we're back and now we're going to enter the Maasverse discussion. Katie, what
Hmm.
are your other thoughts about Thea and Helena?
Yeah, so we were just talking about her description, her physical description, but we also learned that she poured starlight and shadows from her golden skin. So that's suggesting to me at first, I was thinking night court. Okay, she's got to be related to somebody at court. But after our discussion last week, when I'm thinking starlight and shadows, now I'm starting to think, could this be a reference to dusk? Could Helena and Thea be part of the Dusk Court that is, not actually ever been mentioned to have existed, but we have decided this is a very possible thing, jumping in our clown car here and building on it?
Yes, this is what happens when you get in the clown car. You just go full speed ahead and you've just decided that that theory is true until proven otherwise. And also, now that you say that about the starlight and shadows, it makes me think of Rune because he has aspects of starlight and shadow. So
Yeah,
I think our car is going somewhere.
I definitely think we're onto something here. Um, and to kind of just keep driving in our car, I've been watching for all things that point to there being this dust court, right? And I found something interesting in this chapter. The color of Bryce's nails are described as dusk sky, which we learn when she's tapping them on a table because she's pissed off at Hunt for eating her croissant. But I don't know, it's just a subtle nod to the dust court. And I'm like, ooh, could this just be a little bit of hinting that Sarah J Maas is just classic for?
Yeah, and I feel like I've never thought of nail color described as dusk before. I've gotten my nails done a lot, and that color or like that has never come up. So I'm a little sus.
Yeah, I also when I read that it didn't conjure like a specific color for me. I wasn't like, oh, I know exactly what that color looks like. So kind of along the lines to her scent, where I don't know what starlight smells like, I'm thinking these are key foreshadowing pieces.
I really think that you're onto something.
Yeah. Well, we'll just keep driving in the clown car until it crashes. Along the lines of her scent. Last time we were talking about, oh, it must be the night court, but now I'm really thinking that it's alluding to the dusk court. So I'm gonna say, never mind, that's another hint that the dusk court is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very specific. The first stars at nightfall. That happens at dusk. The stars are out before it's really nighttime. So
Yeah.
we are fully invested in this series.
Yeah. I love it.
Me too. I will honestly be upset if it doesn't end up being true.
Yes. Um, there's one more piece of this Helena Pelias Theia information that I want to go over. And this is not a full-fledged theory. This is just food for thought. I'm not ready to get in a clown car on this yet. But in a Greek myth, Helena was stolen from her husband, and she was married to the king of Sparta. And she was taken by Paris, and that started the whole Trojan War. Um, so that's pretty significant. And I feel like that naming choice can't be, um, I don't know, it can't be a coincidence. And here in Crescent City, Theia was the Fae Queen and Pelias was her general. And we also know that Lady Helena and Pelias are married. Did Helena get stolen from Pelias at some point? Or maybe was the other sister stolen and that's why we don't know her name? Who is that other sister? I don't know. I feel like this person must be somebody that we've met either in Akatar world because that's where we're thinking they came from when they crossed the Northern Rift, or somebody I don't know that we haven't met yet. I just feel like this person's important and I want to know who it is.
Yeah, me too. I'm curious to see if any of our theories turn out to be right.
Yeah,
Guess
me
we'll just
too.
have to keep reading and maybe wait for the third book too to find out. We have a lot to cover before we even third book even comes out. We're going to be getting one and two down and getting all our theories ready to go for when that third book comes out.
Yes, yeah. I can't wait for that. But I think for now that's it on our theories. I love them all, and I'm just, yeah, so excited to keep building on them. And we'll see if our clown car crashes on the dust court. But maybe it'll pan out and we'll feel really cool.
Maybe we'll drive off into the sunset or the dust set. I don't know. That's not a thing.
Oh,
But anyway, only time will tell. So for next week, we're going to be reading chapters 30 to 37. So do your homework, read those chapters, and meet us back here.
yeah. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you liked, commented, or shared this episode with one of your book friends.
Yes, thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Thanks for attending English class today.
To keep the discussion going, join us on Instagram at the High Lady Book Club.
Make sure you do your homework for next week, and we'll see you back here.